Well, we talked to Matt Doyle on Tuesday, and boy, have some things changed since then.
Emergency podcast. Verde did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, hurry up, shut up, hurry up, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies. Clearly, Sunday morning here after a 2-1 loss to Sporting Kansas City on the back of a 5-0 loss to San Diego, and it's a pretty bad time to be an Austin FC fan right now. So we had talked to Matt Doyle, though, and it just so happened that we had scheduled that for Tuesday, which happened to be MLSPA Salary Guide Christmas, where we got some indications of what Austin FC players and players around the rest of the league were paid. So kind of a momentous time to talk to him. And then we're just basically evaluating what Austin FC has been doing to that point in the season so far and talking about some of the other teams around the league too. So we've been hanging on to this. We were going to make this part of our Saturday morning podcast that we released prior to the SKC game, but we decided to do this as a standalone. So that's what you've got here. So a little conversation I had with Matt. But again, this did happen Tuesday. 2 losses followed this. So some of the stuff in here might make you a little wincy, but I think a good listen overall. Matt, of course, you know his work and you know his kind of continuing history with the Austin FC fan base. So kind of a good time, I think, or at least that was the indication of the time to get a temperature check from him. And here you have it. Enjoy. And we'll certainly be keeping an eye out to see if there are any hint emergency podcasts that we need to do before our regular scheduled time for, reasons.
Transition.
We're here with Matt Doyle. You might know him from his past work with MLSsoccer.com. He has launched a new site called Tactics Free Zone. And Matt, first of all, a very merry MLSPA Christmas to you. I don't know how much salary guide you've been rolling through since that went up, but I'm sure you've got an eye to it.
Yeah, I've actually, after seeing the numbers, I've decided to shutter my website and I'm going to pursue a career as a center back for Atlanta United because apparently that is the best money you can make for the smallest amount of work possible. And it just feels like the right time to take that step in my career.
Okay. Well, good luck to you there.
Thank you.
Face various strikers around the Eastern Conference in front of thousands.
And just let them run right past me. I'm qualified for the job. I can do it.
Okay, well, Atlanta, I didn't know they were going to catch strays today, but so be it. So obviously you are Austin's #1 fan, and we are an Austin FC podcast. So we wanted to talk about Verde here. First of all, now that you've had about 12 matches to assess Austin so far in 2026, you've got them 18th in your power rankings currently. What are you seeing from the team?
They're a pretty boring team. I don't think that they do much that's interesting with the ball. They can be dangerous on the counter. They can be pretty good on set pieces. They have a match winner in Brad Stuver, which has been huge for them. And we saw down the stretch last year, right? Stuver slumped a little bit. He was not himself for the last 8 or 10 games, and Austin went right into the toilet with him. And I was a little concerned about that and wrote about it heading into the season because with the way that Austin plays, they don't have a margin for error with their goalkeeper, right? It's the same thing with like Charlotte. Charlotte is the same type of team with the same type of game model where it's like all that value created in the box that ends up being on the goalkeeper to deal with. And if Colleen is great, then Charlotte can win 9 games in a row. If he's slumping like he is now, then they'll lose 5 straight. And it's the same thing with Austin. So I'm happy to see that he's bounced back and he's once again one of the top 3 or 4 keepers in the league. But other than that, like there's not any sort of holistic progress with the ball or in terms of evolving the game model that I've seen.
Yeah, I was going to ask about Stuver specifically because of the comments that you'd made last year, which I think some fans here took a little bit of umbrage with. But again, he has faced, I think Austin is the first team this season, this is floating around, that's faced over 200 shots, whereas some teams haven't even faced 100. He's leading the league in saves. Of course, All-Star games in Charlotte. So even though you're
slandering Christian Kalina here. He could be getting one of the All-Star spots. Do you think Stuver gets another? Do you think there's others in contention? A little
Phil,
bit early to talk about All-Star, but
I
but
got
we do.
freed. I got freed from MLS clutches. I don't have to pretend to give the slightest
Swear
about the All-Star game in any way.
Okay, so you're not going to be there. You're not going to be in Charlotte. We
I'm
usually
not.
don't go
Well,
anyway, right?
no, I might be there because it's a good chance to drink, but I don't care who makes it. I don't care whether the team plays well or whether they give up 6 goals. None of that matters to me.
Okay, but saying that he's one of the top 3 or 4 goalkeepers in the league, that would theoretically constitute an all-star spot outside of.
So if we
being
did
picked by his
something
coach.
cool, if MLS did something cool, like you know how NBA does all NBA teams, first team, second team, third team.
Sure.
But MLS does a best 11, and it's never representative because fullbacks, defensive midfielders never get voted into it, and they should.
Right.
But if there were representative best 11, second 11, third 11, Stuver would absolutely be in contention for one of those spots and would have been for basically the entirety of his Austin playing career. He's been that good.
Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about Murdo Izuni. Obviously, not a great end for him last year with the missed PKs when it counted most in the playoffs and in the Open Cup final. But he got his first chance. He converted in this most recent game that they had, and a little bit of fear came up when he stepped to the line against the Loons, but he managed to get that in. Kind of a wild 2-2 affair, obviously. So Austin has been letting in a lot of goals from those kind of positions, winning or drawing positions, with goals given up in 68th minute or later from that. That's just kind of a statistical tangent I'm on. But what are you seeing out of Izuni? It seems like he's more comfortable in this kind of connector role that Nico Estevez has him in, particularly with Facundo Torres there, and then Christian Ramirez kind of filling in as the substitute Superman until the real quote unquote Superman Brandon Vasquez rounds back into form.
Yeah, I mean he's a second forward, right? Like that's what his best years in Spain came as a guy who plays off of a true number 9, and he mostly wasn't able to do that last year because I thought the roster construction was so poor, and they lucked into Christian Ramirez this year, and that's been a godsend in terms of some results, but also in terms of unlocking Izuni, this $12 million attacker that they played on or they paid for without ever thinking about how he would fit into the team. And now after a year, they have the pieces to make him fit better. And certainly the way Austin have played, right, with a lot of those chances coming on the break, I think that fits for Izuni. So you have that better fit in terms of personnel, better fit in terms of game model, and then just I think a better understanding of the league, more comfort with the league. We see a lot of guys in year 2 who take a big step forward and play better soccer and are more productive, and it seems like he's doing that. Now that said, if they get the right offer this summer, I would not be shocked if he was out the door because he doesn't seem like a guy who long-term raises a team's ceiling. He seems more like a guy who can go out there and get you a couple goals. Maybe he'll have 12 goals and 5 assists on the year, which wouldn't be bad, but it's also, you probably need more than that from a centerpiece DP if you want to compete with the Vancouvers, LAFCs, and the Seattles of the world.
Yeah, my working theory on this is that Ozuni was kind of dog that caught the car situation, that they were going after Vasquez and Ozuni was the plan B, and they got both and figured, okay, well, Nico, you have fun, figure out what to do with this. I'm just kind of curious though. I mean, Ramirez and Vasquez to me seem like they are on the surface at least, and maybe you can dissuade me of this, but very similar center forwards in terms of their approach to the game. And I'm just wondering, why do you think maybe it's working with Ramirez this year so far, whereas it hasn't necessarily been working with Vasquez? When Vasquez and Izuni were playing with each other last year, they seemed out of sync, and I'm just wondering if it's other pieces that they brought in, particularly what Torres brings to the mix.
Well, I think there is a little bit more width in the attacks, and that has created maybe a little bit more space underneath for the forwards to work, for one. And for two, in terms of getting chances last year, Vasquez was really good. Like, he found chance after chance, and they were mostly falling to him rather than Izuni, but like, hey, at least somebody's getting chances the first half of the year. He just wasn't finishing them. And then that's just the way it goes sometimes, right? Like sometimes, you're shooting from 35 yards and you get a deflection into the back of the net, and other times you can't score multiple chances inside the 6-yard box. So I was a little, I'm not going to say bullish, but you could see that at least something was working last year. And this year, I'm seeing kind of the same things. I think Vasquez is a little bit more north-south than Christian Ramirez is, a little bit more pace in the open field. And maybe because Ramirez is, I think, a little bit more clever about connecting, maybe now that's opening up space for Izuni to run into. Whereas last year, God, I'd have to go back and look at the tape, which obviously I haven't done in a while. But last year, maybe Vasquez and Izuni were kind of running into the same channels, which is why there was less chemistry. So even though Vasquez is a 9, Ramirez is a 9, and they do a lot of things the same, it's not 100% like for like. And I think you see that a little bit on the connection, especially inside the box from Ramirez and Izuni.
Right. And yeah, last year with both Azuni and Vasquez, the difference between their actual goals and their XG was vast. They were in the same territory as Simon Bescher. And I don't know if you caught the game between St. Louis and Austin and the miss that Bescher had. You understand where the XG versus the G is for Bescher in that case, right? So I did want to talk about some other teams though, but first I did want to get with Torres a little bit again, because just when he came into the league, everybody looked at his XA in particular and thought that was low, but he's doing pretty well assist wise. I mean, a lot of that is coming off set pieces. But just what are you seeing in terms of his reacclimation to MLS after time away at Palmeiras?
I mean, he's a guy who can exploit advantages, right? He doesn't create advantages with the ball for the rest of the attack. He's not someone who can unlock a defense, but if the field's been tilted, if that advantage has already been created, then he's very good at taking advantage of it, making the right play, finishing plays off. And that's a nice piece to have. He's not who I would have spent $10 million on or whatever it was, but he's been unquestionably productive in MLS in years past. But I still think that there's a lack of that guy in midfield, or maybe the midfield system overhaul, to create those advantages in the first place when the team is using the ball. And if you don't have that, then you really are reduced to this kind of one-dimensional soccer. And while I think the talent level is high enough to win you some games and collect some points, it's not really high enough to compete in the playoffs against teams like LAFC.
Sure. I mean, Owen Wolf's had all of 10 minutes this season so far after the sports hernia surgery and the kind of slow recovery from that.
Do you feel that Owen Wolf is that type of creator of advantages, a guy who can sort of crack open opposing defenses and conduct tempo? Because I'm not sure I see that from him.
I mean, not purely and primarily, but I mean, I think he can do that in that capacity. I do think that he has skills towards that, and we did see this major leap from him last year. I'm concerned that the injury is going to set him back a little bit, but I saw him developing on that trajectory. I mean, he's not a heliocentric number 10 by any stretch of the imagination. I see him kind of best as an 8, just kind of as a box to box, but I do think that he has that kind of creative ability, at least, to where if you played him off a true number 10, you'd have something I think really special. Of course, Estevez has been trying to play Torres as a 10 too, which I don't think is necessarily the best use of him either. That's been a recurring theme with Estevez. It's like nobody can see the positions that Estevez sees these people playing, like Rosales, for example, playing as a winger and now playing as a defensive midfielder, even went as far as to say in a press conference that he's not a left back, which I'm sure came as a great surprise to Honduras and Minnesota fans.
Right.
but he's seeing something in these players. And I mean, he's an interesting coach. I mean, definitely thoughtful, definitely unfailingly nice. But again, I kind of wonder about the way that he is moving the chess pieces around on the field, as it were, and kind of how that's all going to sort out. So any kind of last thoughts before we move on to some other teams? Because I did want to
so about that, is there a disconnect then between the coach and the front office? Because it seems like the coach wants to play with a number 10 and he keeps trying guys who aren't necessarily fits for number 10, and the front office just refuses to buy a number 10.
Yeah, I don't know that it's refusing to buy as much as it is just failing to necessarily find the right one on the open market. We've kind of talked about that a little bit, kind of behind the scenes with Rodo and with Nico, and they seem to think that there are players that can function in that role, that you don't need, quote unquote, a pure heliocentric number 10 in order to be able to generate the kind of chances that need to happen on the soccer field, that you don't need to get your primary number of assists from a 10. I would love to see them play with one just to see something different, because Austin's never really had one. But I think they're both also kind of valuing positional flexibility as well, people that you can plug into 4 or 5 different spots. And I think they're thinking that they have the players that can do that. And to some degree, I think that's working. I mean, Rosales has been pretty excellent wherever he's been on the field this year. It's just, I kind of wonder if it's really this kind of insight or if it's kind of being clever for clever's sake.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So I want to get to what I think are kind of the two biggest surprises of the season. And I'm going to go horrible dad joke for a second and call them sand prizes. You have San Diego, who is doing pretty terribly this season so far, at least record wise. And then San Jose, who has came out of the gates absolutely fantastic, of course, winning 9 of their first 10 and looking like they're a potential Shield contender here.
So I would argue that to a decent extent, neither of these teams should be considered that big of a surprise. And I'll take San Diego first.
Okay.
Outkicked their coverage last year, right? Like their underlying numbers were not as good as their record. And they got lucky in that LAFC and Vancouver in particular, and also Seattle, were sort of caught up with other competitions. The regular season grind wore those teams down. Well, San Diego didn't have that. Like they were not in CONCACAF Champions Cup. They weren't in Open Cup. They didn't last long in Leagues Cup. They got to focus on the regular season for one. And then the other part of it was like they had a new and unique game model that caught teams off guard. And teams have a year's worth of, first of all, teams have a year's worth of data on that. Second of all, San Diego exiled Chucky Lozano and did not replace him. So they have one fewer match winner, one fewer player with gravity on the field. And then third of all, they started off the year with CONCACAF Champions Cup. And they played really well the first month of the year, month and a half of the year. Beat Toluca in the first game, miracle result, but they still beat them. And then they lost in the second game at Toluca and went into the tank after that. And we see that every year, right? Okay. It's really like most teams come out of CONCACAF Champions Cup, win, lose, or draw, and struggle. And it's especially true for young teams that don't have a lot of guys who can just brute force you a win with their superior talent. And that fits San Diego like a glove. I still think this is comfortably a playoff team. Top 5 might end up being a little bit of a reach, but I wouldn't be shocked if they were close to that.
With San Diego, then, obviously minus the Chucky Lozano factor, is this kind of the same scenario with St. Louis from 23 to 24, where they come out the first year and kind of surprise everybody, and then in 24, everybody's got a year of tape on them, and then they kind of crash back to earth?
No, because San Diego was actually a good team that played real soccer. Right. St. Louis was all just pure luck. Like it was the darkest, deepest old magic that I've ever seen take place in MLS. And you could tell by the middle of that year that it was over. And
you could tell by the end of the first game when you had Jared Stroud calling for a pass that Kip Keller fed him.
Right. Ruined that guy's career, man. Like St. Louis, it was just inexplicable, and then it was over, and they've never won consistently since then. San Diego's a real team. They were going to come back down to earth, and they have, but they're not as bad as they looked recently. They're mitigating circumstances. And then the other thing is they have so much room to do work this summer, and I think they're finally ready to. I think they're finally going to make the kind of moves that we've all been waiting for from them.
Okay. Yeah, and again, by the time that this drops, we will know how Austin fared against San Diego and San Diego, which will be interesting. So you wanted to talk about San Jose, and then I wanted to also talk about Austin's next home opponent to close us out, which I think you'll find pretty delicious. But yeah, let's get into San Jose for a sec.
Yeah, the thing with San Jose, and I'll be quick here, they were so much better than their underlying numbers last year, for one. For two, Daniel was terrible in goal in 2025, and he's been excellent in goal in 2026. And that is a huge swing right there. And three, it's addition by subtraction. They had a bunch of attackers last year who did not defend, and it made it so easy to just build right into the heart of that midfield, get them into rotations, get them scrambling, get them chasing. And there's no team in the world that can win games consistently if they're chasing the ball all the time. And San Jose, because of their personnel up top, were chasing the ball all the time. Different personnel, arguably less talented in terms of just individual ability, but they fit together perfectly and they all defend. And if everybody on the field is going to run their socks off defensively, even Timo Werner, even your 20-year-old number 10, and especially the striker who you found in USL, everybody on the same page doing that, you're going to be tough to build against, and you're going to win a lot of games. Now, setting a record, I didn't see that coming, but I thought San Jose would be a 55-point team this year, and they're certainly going to be good for that.
Yeah, for sure. So I didn't get to hear from you, though, which one team may have surprised you then, because apparently San Diego and San Jose didn't. So if there's been one team.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, DC United are a little bit better than I thought they would be. Philly are a lot worse than I thought they would be. I didn't think it would be anything close to what they were last year, right? I thought their offseason was unserious, like selling all those guys and doubling down on youth. It was an unserious offseason when it comes to being competitive. But the game model has been robust in the past, and they still are creating chances. Just none of these strikers, they spent $10 million on strikers. None of them could hit the broadside of a barn. It's incredible. So I don't think they're anywhere near as bad as their record, but they kept Ernst Tanner around, so they deserve everything that's coming to them.
It's refreshing to be able to have takes like this now that you're
Oh, it really
free of the
is.
shackles of MLS, right?
It really is.
Well, you have called Sporting Kansas City historically bad. You say you were running out of ways to write about how bad they are. Of course, as we are heading into this particular podcast, the next opponent we are facing is SKC. So tell me more. What should we expect hosting SKC on Saturday night?
And all the focus was on David Lee, CSO, for failing to put together a roster until 20 minutes before the first game kicked off. And you
why
could
was that?
say, yeah, right.
No, seriously. I mean, why was
It's a good question. I think the answer he would give is he was taking over a team that was just Peter Vermees. The entire org structure was one guy and then his buddy Mike Burns, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
And he wanted to build out now, again, this is the CSO's spin, right? This is not 100%. I'm not 100% buying this, but I just, for the sake of understanding where he would be coming from, his answer is going to be, I have to build out an entire organization. I want to do that before I give out any contracts that could handcuff us, which has a good amount of logic to it, right?
Sure,
Like you don't want to do what Atlanta did and spend $50 million on guys who are not high-level players in this league. At the same time, there's no excuse for them to be this bad. I honestly believe you and I could put together a team from MLS bench players and USL guys and put a more competitive product on the field than what Sporting Kansas City have put out there this year, especially because they have holdovers, guys like Dejan Joveljic and Manu Garcia, who are like good players. You know, you have your 9 and your 10, you should at least be decent, and they are not. They got rid of Daniel Shalaway for pennies. Like they could sure use that guy. So it's kind of a nonsense year from this team. And then, look, man, Rafael Vicky won, I think, 12 of 55 games as a Chicago Fire head coach. And he got another chance with this job. And we're a third of the way into the season, and this team does not look coached. And there's certain things you're not going to be able to do, right? You're not going to be able to turn Manu Garcia into Lionel Messi, and you're not going to be able to turn Ethan Bartlow into Giorgio Chiellini. It's just, that is too far. But you can have obvious pressing triggers. You could have clarity on where you want to funnel the ball to. You could have understanding of when to step, when to drop. You could have tightness between your lines, right? It's very, like, for as long as soccer has been a game, the right of the week has been to drop your line deep, play compact, and be hard to break down. And Sporting Kansas City can't even do that. They do not look like, they are bad in all the ways that Rafael Vicky's Chicago Fire teams were bad, except those Fire teams actually had half decent talent, and Sporting Kansas City does not. And to put numbers to it, the single season record for goal differential, negative goal differential, is minus 37, which I think was 2019 FC Cincinnati. Sporting Kansas City right now is on track to be minus 70.
Oh my God. That's bad.
And
That's so bad.
Their underlying numbers align with that. Their underlying numbers are saying, like, yeah, this is not a mistake. They're exactly this bad.
They're not unlucky. They're on track for this based on how they're playing.
Yep.
Well, you know what Wes Burdine said about Wiki?
Oh God, what's that?
If you can't hire a good coach, hire a hot coach.
Yeah, he is. If he wasn't this handsome, do you think he would have gotten the job? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like that episode of 30 Rock, The Bubble,
Mhm.
with John Hamm.
Right.
He's a doctor,
Yeah.
and Liz Lemon is like, "You're a terrible doctor." You did. The whole joke is like he gets all these privileges because he's so good looking, and maybe this is just the 30 Rock episode brought to MLS because
Mhm.
based upon now we're approaching 70 game sample size
Mhm.
across all competitions across two teams from Rafael Vicky. This man is in so far over its head. It is sitcom worthy stuff.
Okay. Yeah. But he probably lasts the full season, right? Because it doesn't seem like necessarily like what are they going to do? Like, are they going to reload in the summer? I thought, for example, Diego Fagundes was sitting out there. I mean, his contract has been kind of unmanageable, which is why he didn't get to Austin. But you figure a veteran winger who's played with Jovic before, that seemed like that would have been like a way you could have gone to bolster the team.
Yeah. There were any number of signings they could have made to achieve respectability, if not
Right.
necessarily outright competitiveness, and they chose none of the above.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So, just as a last wrap, what are you looking forward to the next few months other than hitting a little bit of pause on the MLS season and going into the World Cup?
Yeah, pause on MLS season and fast forward for the World Cup. We're doing the Soccerwise gang. We're doing and Kickback because Susanna Fuller is going to be part of it as well.
Okay.
We're going to be doing a daily World Cup show from Midtown Manhattan every day at like 9:30 a.m. Eastern, about 45 minutes or so of analysis. And it should be fun. It's going to be fun to
Okay.
be on camera again and sling those takes.
Oh, that'll be awesome. So getting
Yeah.
to Midtown. Yeah, speaking of, I hear that Fox is hiring somebody to watch every World Cup match inside a plastic box in Times Square and create social content. Are you guys going to go? I could see Susanna going and visiting whoever this lucky person
I
is.
I didn't
Air
realize
quotes
that,
here.
I didn't realize that was a thing that was happening. Yeah, that'll be someone else's job if we need to create
You don't want
social
to
off of
you
that.
don't want to sit in a box and watch every World Cup game.
I don't want to talk to the type of person who would sit in the box for Fox. So
All right. Well, yeah, just to remind people where they can find you, obviously, Soccerwise, wherever you find your podcast, and then a little bit about Tactics Free Zone. You've come over to the Ghost family from Substack,
Yes.
which is a fantastic place to be. So tell us how you get there and how you support.
yeah, it's tacticsfreezone.com. It's a newsletter. It comes out 3 or 4 times a week. Half of them are free. You could read them without even signing up. But if you want to give your email to me, that's great. If you want to give your email and subscribe so you get the Sunday night column that I've been writing for 15 years, hey, that's even better. So it's all the stuff that I was doing for MLS for 15 years. I just picked it up, moved it to my own thing.
Okay, well, good. Well, as you watch Austin's every minute throughout the season, I hope they entertain you more because that would be fun for all of us. And
Pointed in the right direction recently, I will say that.
for sure,
So,
for sure. Getting over those injuries helps that. So yeah, so good to have you on. Great talking to you, and we'll be keeping an eye on your stuff and listening for getting all the World Cup takes that you guys are going to give us as well.
we'll do this again soon, Phil.
Awesome.